Hello, dear friends. Welcome to Channel Crime Story Diaries. On the morning of July 30th, 2011, around 10 a.m., residents of the elite residential complex, the Hyde in Sydney, Australia, heard bone-chilling screams coming from a balcony on the 15th floor. Several witnesses, puzzled by what they saw, rushed to the base of the building where they found the victim, 30-year-old Lisa Cecilia Harnum, who had fallen to her death. Within minutes, a distraught man, the victim's fiancé, 37-year-old Simon Gittany, ran out of the building in a state of shock and grief. At first glance, it might have seemed like a horrific accident, but a torn note was found in Lisa's pocket with the words, "There are surveillance cameras everywhere in the apartment." This chilling incident immediately attracted public and media attention. The question arose, what exactly happened in those fatal minutes before the tragedy? Was it an accident, an intentional act, or possibly a crime? This high-profile event shook two countries, Australia, where the tragedy occurred, and Canada, the victim's homeland. The case of Lisa Harnum and Simon Gittany became one of the most discussed and controversial criminal trials in Australian history. It drew significant attention to the issue of domestic violence, dangerous controlling relationships, and made many wonder, was the punishment fair and sufficient? Was justice restored for Lisa and her family? Lisa Cecilia Harnum was born in June 1981 in a suburb of Toronto, Canada, and was the second child in the family. She was raised along with her older brother Jason by their single mother, Joan. The children barely remembered their father because he left the family when they were very young and no longer participated in their lives. Lisa grew up as an active and goal-oriented girl. From a young age, she was passionate about sports. She attended karate classes with her brother and loved playing soccer and volleyball. But her main passion has always been ballet. Lisa spent several hours a day training at the dance studio. The girl was naturally tall and slender, but professional ballet training required a strict diet, which had a detrimental effect on her health. In her teens, against the backdrop of an eating disorder, Lisa developed anorexia. She kept silent about her problem for a long time, believing that she could handle it herself. But when her weight approached critically low values, her mother sounded the alarm and placed her daughter in a clinic, where Lisa had to spend several months to restore her health and gain weight. After finishing school, the girl continued her dance classes and also decided to connect her life with the beauty industry. In parallel with her university studies, she got a job as a perfume consultant in one of the stores of a large cosmetics chain, and in her free time, she mastered the intricacies of makeup and hairdressing. In 2005, at the age of 24, Lisa decided to expand her horizons, travel, and gain new experiences. She moved to Australia on a 12-month work visa. The girl wanted to live in a warmer climate than in Canada, with its short, hot summers and long, very cold winters. Despite the great distance and time difference, Lisa remained very close to her family. She regularly talked and corresponded with her mother, Joan. Her family supported her move and plans to obtain Australian citizenship and make this country her permanent home. At first, Lisa told her mother that it was a temporary arrangement. She planned to live with Simon while looking for something else. She assured that there was nothing uncomfortable to worry about because she was almost certain that Simon was not interested in women at all. Lisa got a job at the Australian College of Hairdressing and Beauty in Sydney. This position at the salon was a good choice for Lisa, who loved fashion, hairstyles, and beauty trends. The girl was able to extend her stay by finding a job. In 2009, Lisa was looking for a new place to live, so a friend introduced her to a potential roommate. This was a man about 10 years older than her, named Simon Gittany. Simon was a shoe importer, wore expensive suits, and, at least outwardly, lived a lifestyle typical of up-and-coming Sydney professionals. He and his business partner imported mainly from the United States and made a profit in Australia by selling expensive shoes online. Lisa moved into Simon's luxurious apartment on the 15th floor of an exclusive high-rise building in Sydney's central business district called the Hyde. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened onto a spacious balcony with a stunning view of Hyde Park, a 40-acre park in the city's business district. Only after 2 months of living together, Lisa and Simon started a romantic relationship. Lisa told her mother that at the initial stage of the relationship, she and Simon got along well. Notably, Lisa never mentioned that she was in love with Simon. Nevertheless, the relationship seemed to develop quickly. Time passed, the couple grew closer, and the relationship became more serious. In June 2011, on her 30th birthday, Simon proposed to Lisa in front of a large gathering at a restaurant. Simon invited his closest friends and family to be with them. Shortly before Lisa's 30th birthday, Simon began persistently persuading her to quit her job, claiming that she was not appreciated there and could find a better paying position. But Lisa loved working at the beauty salon, where she had many regular clients, and was satisfied with her earnings, so she didn't understand why she should quit and refused to do so. The refusal did not suit Simon, and in August of the same year, he showed up at Lisa's salon, making a loud scene that actually forced her to write a letter of resignation. Lisa Harnum was shocked by his behavior, but Gittany assured her that it would be better this way, and in general, she could no longer work because his income would be enough for both of them to live comfortably and not deny themselves anything. But what Lisa really didn't know was that Simon had a rich criminal past. Gittany first ended up behind bars at the age of 18 when he came to his ex-girlfriend's store where she worked and began openly harassing her. The store owner stood up for the girl and threw the bully out the door, but Simon returned with friends who grabbed the store owner and held him while Simon brutally beat the man. That time, the guy only served a few months and was released on bail for good behavior. But 3 years later, he was arrested again, this time on theft charges. However, Simon resisted violently, got into a fight, and bit off one of the policeman's earlobe. He was facing a serious prison term for this stunt, but the pastor of the Lebanese Christian church, of which his entire family was members, intervened. As a result, the young man spent only a year and a half of the 4 years assigned in prison. Simon gave his beloved an expensive smartphone and laptop, pre-installing spyware on them that allowed him to track all her messages, emails, as well as eavesdrop on calls and see all of Lisa's movements. In addition, Simon gained access to her social media accounts and began secretly cleaning out friend lists, deleting posts and photos at his discretion, as well as reading personal correspondence. Gittany's control over Lisa increased day by day, but as an experienced manipulator, he made it seem as if his girlfriend wanted to do what he told her to do. Gittany literally invaded all aspects of her life, leaving no hint of privacy. He forbade Lisa to use cosmetics, claiming that she wore too bright makeup which made her look vulgar. He also bought her closed and unattractive clothes in gray and black colors, and simply threw away all her outfits, arguing that they were too revealing and men would stare at her. Lisa left the apartment only accompanied by her lover. They visited together only those places that he himself chose. Simon even forbade her to go to the gym. Instead, he bought several expensive exercise machines, saying that now she could work out at home. Lisa's friend lists on social networks were dwindling by the day, and eventually Gittany convinced her to delete the accounts. Lisa also had no friends left in real life, and all her contacts and calls were closely monitored. Simon only allowed her to communicate with her mother and brother. In December 2010, Lisa decided to fly to Canada to celebrate Christmas with her family. Simon was going to fly with her, but at the last moment, his plans were disrupted due to urgent work matters. He didn't plan to let his girlfriend go alone, but she literally begged him because she hadn't seen her mom and brother for over a year. In the end, he agreed, but set strict conditions and rules that she had to strictly follow. Jason and Joan were shocked by the changes that had happened to Lisa over the past year. She was nothing like the bright and cheerful beauty she had been before. She had literally become a shadow of her former self. There was not a drop of makeup on her face. Her luxurious hair was pulled back in a ponytail and hidden under a headdress. Her clothes were baggy, unattractive, and completely black. But it wasn't even the outward changes that were the most frightening. Lisa flinched every time the phone rang and instantly grabbed the receiver. This was one of Simon's conditions. She had to answer immediately, at any time of day, no matter what she was doing at that moment. Lisa stayed at her mother's house all the time, refused to see her friends, and hardly ever went out. Joan was alarmed and frightened by this behavior of her daughter, and she decided to have a heart-to-heart talk with her. Then Lisa burst into tears and admitted that Simon always knows where she is, who she communicates with, and what she talks about on the phone. Lisa also revealed that Simon doesn't allow her to work, see her friends, go to the gym, or have any hobbies. In fact, she had no friends left at all. Her mother was shocked. She began to persuade her daughter to stay in Canada because in Australia she has nothing to keep her. But Lisa said that she loved Simon and did not want to break off the relationship with him. Lisa was sure that this was just a transitional period in their relationship because they had been together for less than a year, and soon he would calm down and loosen his grip. She also added that her lover cares about her and wishes her only good. Despite pleas from her family to stay and attempts to convince Lisa that the relationship was unhealthy, she decided to return to Australia to be with Gittany. Lisa reassured her mother, saying that there was nothing to worry about, that Simon loved her and would not hurt her. After Lisa returned, the situation only got worse. Simon forbade her to leave the apartment, and if they went out together, she had to look only at her feet so as not to meet the eyes of other men. Moreover, Simon began to call Lisa by her second name, Cecilia, because it seemed more decent to him. In the spring of 2011, Lisa began to complain of pain in her leg. It was an old injury received in his youth during ballet classes. But instead of taking her to the hospital, Gittany hired a female physiotherapist who came to their home 3 times a week to give her massages. She soon became Lisa's only friend and confidant, to whom Lisa spoke candidly about the difficult situation she found herself in. On June 12th, for Lisa's 30th birthday, Simon decided to throw a party at the most expensive restaurant in Sydney, but among the guests were only Simon's relatives and people from his inner circle. Lisa, on her own birthday, Simon did not allow to invite anyone. At the end of the evening, Simon proposed to Lisa by putting a ring on her finger. Harnum responded with consent and then cried. But all present noticed that these were not tears of joy, but rather tears of despair and hopelessness. Back home, Lisa called her mother and informed her of her engagement, sobbing into the phone. But Joan was not at all happy about it. She began to persuade her daughter to leave this man and, as soon as possible, to return home to Canada. In response, Lisa only asked her mother never to start such conversations on the phone. At that moment, she already realized that her fiancé was listening to the calls, although she did not know for sure. For a while, Lisa tried to distract herself with thoughts of the upcoming wedding and began planning the festivities. When she decided to consult with Simon about something related to the event, he rudely cut her off and told her that he would choose the place, buy her address, and make the guest list. Lisa was utterly crushed, for she had no say even here. During another visit to the physiotherapist, Lisa admitted that she couldn't go on like this, but she couldn't leave because her fiancé wouldn't let her go. Together, they developed a plan according to which Lisa, at each visit of the masseuse, gave her some of her belongings for safekeeping, but did everything so that Simon did not notice anything. On July 28th, Simon left his laptop at home in a hurry, which he usually carried with him everywhere. Lisa took advantage of this and looked into it, and her worst fears were realized. There, she found a spyware program, with the help of which the fiancé received all the data from her phone, as well as numerous recordings of her conversations with her mother. But the most horrifying discovery was the surveillance footage from the security cameras located in every room of their apartment. That same day, Lisa, using her physical therapist's phone, called her mother and asked her to come on the next flight to her apartment and take her home. However, Joan could not leave work so quickly. She needed time to ask for an excuse to switch shifts with one of her colleagues. Afterwards, the woman could never forgive herself for this delay. Back home, Simon immediately realized that his fiancée had taken his laptop and seen the spyware. Lisa cried, trying to figure out why she deserved to be treated that way, but Simon only pointed out that he'd done it for her own good. The next day, July 29th, a serious conversation took place between the young people, the recording of which was later presented in court. Lisa was in tears and asked to go home, but Gittany calmly and confidently said that this would never happen, asked Lisa to calm down, and claimed that she had mental problems. On the morning of July 30th, 2011, Lisa got up early, got fully dressed, and put her documents and essentials in her purse. She locked herself in the bathroom and called her mother one last time, telling her that if anything happened to her, it would be Simon's fault. Apparently, Lisa wanted to leave the apartment unnoticed while her fiancé slept, but she failed. What happened next can only be guessed. According to neighbors, they heard a scream in the hallway, but did not have time to react because all abruptly hushed. And exactly a minute later, a young woman fell from the balcony of the 15th floor, crashing to her death. Several passers-by on the street also heard the scream and saw a body falling from a height, but did not have time to realize what was happening. According to a guy who was walking his dog that morning and was closest to the scene, he heard a noise and looked up. The eyewitness saw a man holding something large, which he then threw down. When passers-by came to the place of the fall, they saw a young woman lying on the ground, but all attempts to help her were in vain as she died instantly, having received extensive injuries. 3 minutes later, Gittany, dressed in his pajamas, ran out into the street. He was crying, saying he didn't know how he was going to live his life and claiming that he hadn't caught his fiancée in time. At first glance, it looked like an accident, but Simon himself was quick to claim that his fiancée had voluntarily passed away. Strange things began as soon as the body was taken to the morgue and examined. In different pockets were found fragments of a note torn into small pieces with the text, "There are cameras everywhere in the apartment." Probably Lisa was afraid that Simon might find the message, so she turned the note into a kind of garbage and scattered it in different pockets. A check showed that there were indeed a lot of cameras in the apartment, but the hard disk with recordings could not be found, and Simon claimed that there was no video recording at all. On the other hand, a surveillance camera in the communal hallway captured something frightening. The short clip shows Lisa running out of the apartment and calling for help, but her fiancé grabs her from behind, covers her mouth, and drags her back in. This happened a minute before she fell off the balcony, and it was this scream that the neighbors heard. Gittany's laptop was found to contain a recording of a conversation he and Lisa had the night before the tragedy, as well as spyware that Simon used to spy on his fiancée. According to Simon, he and Lisa had an argument that morning, and she became hysterical. She ran out into the hallway screaming, but he brought her back because he didn't want to put on a show for the neighbors. In the apartment, he picked up the phone to call her mother, but Lisa ran out to the balcony at that moment and threw herself down, and he ran after her but did not catch her in time. He claimed that she had threatened to take her own life before, but he didn't take her words seriously. Throughout the trial, Simon was accompanied by his new flame, 22-year-old model Rachel Louise, who bore an uncanny resemblance to his deceased fiancée. However, it was later said that the girl simply wanted to become famous at the expense of this high-profile case, and therefore willingly talked to the press and appeared on television, saying that Gittany would never raise his hand against a woman. Simon's lawyers tried to convince the court that Lisa suffered from a mental disorder, was prone to hysterics, and could have voluntarily taken her own life. They even brought up a long history of anorexia and treatment in a clinic. The defense also argued that the defendant, being short in stature, simply could not physically lift Lisa, who was taller than him, and also could not throw her off the balcony. But this version was refuted by a trainer from the gym, which Simon had attended regularly for many years. According to the trainer, the defendant worked with heavy weights, was much stronger than he appeared outwardly, and could easily have lifted Lisa. This was also supported by the absence of Lisa's fingerprints on the railing and the glass barrier, as she could not have jumped without leaning on them. Also testifying in court was the physiotherapist to whom Lisa had told in detail everything that had happened to her, and had given her her belongings in the hope of escaping from the tyrant. It was her testimony that was decisive. Gittany was found guilty of murdering his fiancée and sentenced to 26 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 18 years. After the verdict was announced, Rachel Louise threw a tantrum and began to insult the judge, for which she was removed from the room. She soon dumped her boyfriend, saying in an interview that it was difficult for them to maintain a relationship in prison, but she remains convinced of his innocence. Despite obvious evidence of guilt, Simon continues to claim that he is innocent. However, he framed himself because the lion's share of the evidence against him was obtained with the help of his own spy devices. The mother and brother of the deceased were satisfied with the verdict. They believed that if it were not for the recordings from the camera and the passers-by who saw what happened and testified against Simon, then most likely the murder would have gone unpunished. After that, Lisa's mother began to participate in public work. She disseminated information about domestic violence and even helped girls who found themselves in similar difficulties. From her own bitter experience, she learned by what signs one can identify a manipulator and how one should act in order to save one's life. The story of Lisa Harnum and Simon Gittany has become one of the most high-profile cases of domestic violence and dangerous relationships, drawing public attention to this problem. It showed how important it is to recognize alarming signals in a partner's behavior in time and not be afraid to seek help. As Lisa's mother said after the trial, they will always mourn their beautiful Lisa Cecilia and work to ensure that her legacy becomes a powerful wake-up call for young women, their parents, brothers, sisters, and friends to be attentive to the warning signs of controlling relationships and proactively approach helping those who need it. The conviction of Simon Gittany was an important precedent and a clear signal that domestic violence and crimes against women will not go unpunished. Although unfortunately, it will not bring Lisa back to her loved ones, hopefully it will help prevent similar tragedies in the future. Traditionally, thank you for watching, and remind you that it would be great if you support the video by liking and subscribing to the channel. It's always interesting and sometimes even creepy.